Yeah, so you started talking about this experience, like, wow, I was so surprised that something so spiritual came through. And I'm curious, like, on multiple different levels of that, anything that you want to expand upon that, and without going into obviously any clients' experiences or yeah, anything that you want to share about the spiritual aspect of that and how you relate to that, having had that experience, and is that something that you have witnessed come up with your clients?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think it does help to have a basis of connection to spirit or like spiritual practice. And I do. Like I have studied spiritual practice for a while. I have like an altar and like kind of like a devotion practice and where I, call upon angels, ancestors, guides, things like that. And I have felt connected to, my best friend Lindsay who's passed and receive signs from beyond that I truly believe are real. So I think going into it with this basis of spirituality is helpful. At least it was for me because I was already like kind of open.
Mhm.
However, I did a little bit of research after my experience. I just like wanted to research really Reddit research, or Reddit can be
Mhm.
research of like spiritual experiences on the EMDR subreddit. And there were a number. And I even saw a story of someone who said, I had religious trauma. I was not spiritual. However, through that process, they were able to connect with something deeper, something more spiritual in themselves. So I think it does have the capacity to kind of open us up to that. And I have seen it with some of my clients, some more than others. However, I feel like therapy is inherently like spiritual, whether we want to call it that or not. But like we are connecting to these really deep parts of ourselves that, help us break through consciousness barriers and find meaning in our lives and purpose. And spirituality can be a huge conduit to that. So,
Wow. It's such a beautiful story of this image of imagining this tree wrapping itself around you,
yeah.
and
Oh, that tree.
such an affirmation of how nature can be such an incredible resource for people, and how, even something as simple as nature, through nature, that is what connects us with
Yeah.
and you're also reminding me of how, I'm not trained in EMDR, but I am trained in brain spotting, which is also
Yeah.
another somatic trauma therapy modality. And there are specific spots that we work with that are spiritual spots. So with like points of focus with the eyes that the
Hmm.
therapist helps the client locate to tap into our spiritual connection or to expand our spiritual connection. And it makes so much sense that these very similar modalities, I mean, brain spotting came out of EMDR and somatic experiencing, and also the ways in which, like, when we're accessing these inner worlds, whether it's parts work or these processes that maybe invite us to go inside in different ways. I'm not sure about the science about this, but I'm curious how similar it is to psychedelics with
Yeah. Yeah.
turning off like the default mode network,
No network. Yeah, I
and
agree.
how
It
when
honestly, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just that. No, like if there's a similar mechanism happening there.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Well, it did feel kind of like a psychedelic experience. I'm having these visions and having these feelings that I wouldn't have in my normal default mode, right? So, yeah, absolutely. And I believe there's lots of different ways to get to these alternate states of consciousness, right? So, even like breath work can take us there, right? So, yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah. I love it. We'll have to do a whole episode on brain spotting because I'm excited to hear more about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.